The clash of bronze against bronze. The thundering of thousands of feet marching toward destiny. The weight of an empire bearing down on a handful of warriors standing their ground. This isn't just another tale of war, this is Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans faced down the mightiest empire the ancient world had ever seen. Or did they? Welcome to Ancient Chronicles, where we peel back the layers of history to reveal the fascinating truth behind its greatest stories. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most legendary last stands in military history. But before we begin, take a moment to imagine yourself there, the hot sun beating down, the narrow mountain pass stretching before you, and the knowledge that beyond those peaks lies an army so vast it drinks rivers dry. If you're new to our channel, hit that subscribe button because this story of courage, betrayal, and sacrifice is just the beginning of our journey through history's most epic moments. The world on the brink, setting the stage. Imagine a world where two vastly different civilizations are about to collide. In one corner, we have the Persian Empire, a massive, sophisticated superpower stretching from the Indus River to the Mediterranean Sea. Their ruler, Xerxes I, commanded the resources of 3 continents and led an army whose very footsteps were said to make the earth tremble. In the other corner stood Greece, not a unified nation, but a collection of fiercely independent city-states. Each had its own laws, customs, and way of life. But they shared something precious, the radical idea that free men could govern themselves without bowing to a king who claimed divine right to rule. The year is 480 BCE, and tensions between these two worlds have reached a breaking point. Xerxes, following in his father Darius's footsteps, has spent years preparing for this moment. His goal? To succeed where his father failed and bring all of Greece under Persian control. But what drove this massive undertaking? Let's break it down. First, there was the matter of revenge. 10 years earlier, at Marathon, the Greeks had handed the Persians a humiliating defeat. This wasn't just a military setback, it was a stain on Persian honor that demanded to be washed clean with blood. Second, there was the question of empire. Persia had grown through conquest, and each victory fed the hunger for more. Greece, with its strategic position and valuable resources, was an appetizing target. Finally, there was the clash of ideologies. The Persian Empire represented centralized authority, where one man's word was law. The Greek city-states, particularly Athens, were experimenting with democracy, a radical notion that threatened the very foundation of Persian power. The players meet the warriors. Let's talk about the men who would make history. On the Greek side, we have King Leonidas of Sparta. Now, Leonidas wasn't just any king, he was a product of the most intensive military training program in the ancient world. From age 7, like all Spartan boys, he had been subjected to the agogia, brutal education system designed to produce warriors who would rather die than surrender. But here's something the movies don't tell you. Leonidas was around 60 years old when he led the defense of Thermopylae. This wasn't some young hothead seeking glory. This was a seasoned commander who understood exactly what he was getting into. The Spartans themselves deserve special attention. Their society was unique in the ancient world, a culture built entirely around military excellence. Every aspect of their lives, from birth to death, was regulated to produce the perfect warrior. But they weren't mindless killing machines. Spartan soldiers were highly educated, trained in music and poetry, as well as combat. They were expected to be philosophers as well as fighters. On the Persian side, we have Xerxes, the king of kings. Contemporary sources describe him as tall and handsome, with a commanding presence that inspired both awe and fear. His army was a multicultural force that included warriors from dozens of conquered nations, each bringing their own fighting styles and weapons to the battlefield. The geography, nature's perfect fortress now. Let's talk about what made Thermopylae so special. The name means hot gates, referring to the sulfur springs in the area. But it was the geography that made this place a military commander's dream or nightmare, depending on which side you are on. Picture this: a narrow coastal pass, barely wide enough for 2 chariots to ride side by side. On one side, steep mountains rose up like nature's own walls. On the other, cliffs dropped sharply to the sea. This created a natural bottleneck where a smaller force could effectively hold off a much larger army. But there's more to the story than just the main pass. The entire area was a complex network of trails and paths, including the infamous mountain track that would later prove crucial to the battle's outcome. The Greeks knew about these paths, they weren't secret. But defending them all would have required spreading their forces to thin. The terrain also played another vital role. It neutralized one of Persia's most feared weapons, their cavalry. In the confined space of the pass, horses couldn't maneuver effectively, rendering a significant portion of Xerxes' army virtually useless. The numbers game debunking the myths now. Let's address one of the most controversial aspects of this battle: the numbers. Ancient sources claim that Xerxes commanded an army of over 2 million men. Modern historians consider this, well, let's call it enthusiastic exaggeration. More realistic estimates put the Persian force at around 100,000 to 150,000 combat troops, still an enormous army for the ancient world, but not the world-destroying horde of legend. Logistically, moving and feeding 2 million men would have been impossible with ancient infrastructure. On the Greek side, the famous 300 Spartans were actually part of a larger force of approximately 7,000 Greeks. This included 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, 400 Thebans, 2,000 Arcadians, various contingents from other city-states, and crucially, around 900 Helots Spartan slaves who served as support troops. This brings us to an important point. While the Spartans' sacrifice was undoubtedly heroic, they weren't alone. The Thespians, in particular, deserve recognition. They chose to stay and die alongside the Spartans, showing equal courage and devotion to the cause. The battle day by day. Let's break down how the battle actually unfolded hour by hour, day by day. Day 1 began with a sight that must have chilled Greek hearts: the massive Persian army appearing on the horizon, their weapons glinting in the morning sun. Xerxes, following custom, waited 4 days for the Greeks to disperse. When they didn't, he ordered the attack. The first waves consisted of Median and Kishan troops, not Persian immortals, as some accounts claim. They charged into the narrow pass, only to meet the Greeks' signature phalanx formation. Picture this: a wall of bronze shields, overlapping like scales on a dragon, with spears protruding from the gaps. The Persians, used to fighting in open terrain, found themselves literally running into a meat grinder. What made the Greek phalanx so effective? It wasn't just the formation, it was the training. Spartans practiced moving as one unit, maintaining formation even in the chaos of combat. When the front rank tired, they could rotate back while another took their place, maintaining constant pressure on the enemy. Day 2 saw Xerxes send in his elite troops, the Immortals. These weren't actually immortal, of course. The name came from their practice of immediately replacing any fallen warrior to maintain their number at exactly 10,000. But even these elite troops failed to break the Greek line. By the end of Day 2, Xerxes was furious. His mighty army was being humiliated by a handful of Greeks. But then came the turning point. Enter Ephialtes, a local shepherd who approached the Persian camp with crucial information. The betrayal and final stand. Ephialtes revealed to the Persians the existence of a mountain path that could be used to outflank the Greek position. Now, as mentioned earlier, this path wasn't actually a secret. The Greeks had posted guards there, a force of about 1,000 Phocians. But when Persian troops appeared above them in the pre-dawn hours of Day 3, these guards retreated, leaving the Greek main force exposed. When scouts reported the Persian movement, Leonidas faced a crucial decision. The strategic purpose of the delay at Thermopylae, buying time for the Greek cities to prepare and the fleet to withdraw, had been achieved. He could withdraw his entire force, or he could hold the position as long as possible to cover the retreat of the Greek army. This is where history gets interesting. Leonidas chose to stay with his 300 Spartans, joined by 700 Thespians who volunteered to remain, and 400 Thebans who were possibly held as hostages due to their city's suspected Persian sympathies. The final stand was nothing like the stylized version shown in movies. It was a desperate, brutal fight. The Greeks abandoned the defensive wall and advanced into the wider part of the pass, seeking to take as many enemies with them as possible before they were overwhelmed. Leonidas fell in this final charge. The remaining Greeks fought to recover his body, demonstrating the Spartan principle that a king must never be abandoned on the battlefield. They held their position until Persian archers literally darkened the sky with arrows, overwhelming the last defenders. The aftermath and legacy, the immediate aftermath of Thermopylae, might seem like a clear Persian victory. The pass was taken, the defenders were killed, and Xerxes' army continued its advance into Greece. But military victories aren't always strategic victories. The delay at Thermopylae achieved several crucial objectives. It allowed the Greek fleet to withdraw in good order. It gave Athens time to evacuate its civilian population. It proved that the Persian army wasn't invincible. Most importantly, it united the Greek cities in a way nothing else could have. The psychological impact was enormous. The Spartans and their allies had shown that free men, fighting for their homes and families, could stand against the might of an empire. This inspiration helped fuel the later Greek victories at Salamis and Plataea, which ultimately drove the Persians from Greece. Separating fact from fiction, let's address some common misconceptions about Thermopylae. Myth. The Spartans fought a lone reality. They were part of a larger Greek force, and other contingents showed equal bravery. Myth. The battle was lost solely due to betrayal. Reality. The position was ultimately untenable against such overwhelming numbers. Myth. The Spartans were primitive warriors facing a sophisticated army. Reality. Spartan military technology and training was equal or superior to Persian. Equipment. Myth. This was a simple case of good versus evil. Reality. Both sides had complex motivations and believed in the justice of their cause. Closing thoughts. The Battle of Thermopylae resonates across the centuries not just because of its drama, but because it speaks to universal themes: sacrifice, duty, betrayal, and the power of choice. It shows us that sometimes victory isn't about surviving, it's about inspiring others to carry on the fight. What would you have done in Leonidas' position? Would you have retreated to fight another day, or stood your ground knowing death was certain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating battles, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Next week, we'll be exploring another incredible chapter of history that shaped our world. This is Ancient Chronicles, reminding you that history isn't just about the past, it's about understanding who we are and what we're capable of achieving.